It is Tuesday morning, and you are dragging the bin to the curb half asleep, the way you have done it 100 times before. You do not look at it. By tomorrow, it will be empty again, and you will forget it ever existed until next week rolls around. That is the entire design of the thing. It is built to disappear from your attention, to become so routine that noticing it at all would feel strange, suspicious, like double-checking that the sun came up on time. This time, nothing comes for it. Not on your street. Every collection crew, every truck, every landfill gate, every recycling sorting line, everywhere on the planet, stopped functioning at the exact same moment. No strike. No budget cut. No delay you can call someone about. Just absence, total and immediate, with no explanation attached to it anywhere, and no timeline for when it might end. The first reaction, for most people, is amusement. Garbage is the least dramatic crisis imaginable. Someone will sort it out eventually, you think. Worst case, you drive it somewhere yourself. But nobody engineered garbage collection to be exciting or noticeable. They engineered it to be invisible, a quiet daily machine whose only real job is putting distance between you and everything you throw away. Pull that machine out from under a city, and the waste itself does not vanish along with it. It stays precisely where it was left, and within days, it starts behaving differently than it did when someone was reliably coming for it. An average person in the United States produces something close to 4.5 pounds of trash every single day. That number sounds abstract until you multiply it across every household, every hospital, every restaurant kitchen, every office building, every school cafeteria, every construction site, all producing simultaneously, none of it moving anywhere at all. That is the actual scale hiding behind a sentence, as boring as the truck did not come this week. During the first few hours, nothing looks wrong. Bins are a little fuller than usual, but nobody panics over a full bin on a Tuesday. A few people call the city, get a busy signal or an automated message, shrug, and go back to their day. There are more urgent things to worry about, or so it seems, and life continues at its normal pace for everyone, unaware that the same silence is happening on every street, in every city, at once. By the second day, something starts to feel slightly off, in a way that is hard to name at first. Bags start appearing beside bins instead of inside them, because the bins are already full and there is nowhere else for anything to go. Restaurants fill it before households do, since a single busy dinner service produces more waste in one evening than most homes generate in a week, and there is suddenly no truck coming to take any of it away. Behind grocery stores, produce that would normally be gone by morning sits there in the open air, ripening in full view of anyone walking past on the sidewalk, softening into something closer to compost than food, drawing the first curious insects of the week. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment, not reading past quickly. How many days could your kitchen realistically go before the smell became something you could not ignore anymore, before you started rationing what you threw away to buy yourself a little more time? Hold that number in your head. Tell me your exact answer in the comments below right now. Which room would become unbearable first, and how would you handle it? I read every comment, and your perspective makes this discussion significantly better, because that number is certainly smaller than you would like to believe, and that is before your neighbor's trash starts affecting the air around yours too, seeping under doors and through open windows on a warm afternoon. By day 3, construction sites become an unexpected pressure point nobody thought to mention at first. A single renovation project generates dumpsters full of drywall, wood scraps, packaging, and debris every week, material that was never designed to sit on a residential street for long. Contractors start improvising, stacking material on sidewalks, in driveways, wherever there is room, and cities that already had housing pressure now have construction sites grinding to a halt because nobody can legally remove what the last job produced. Homeowners mid-renovation find themselves living beside a growing pile of debris they were told would be gone within days. A week into this, the crisis stops being about how a street looks and starts being about what a street smells like and what is now living inside it. Warm weather speeds up decomposition dramatically, sometimes within a single afternoon. Flies arrive immediately around anything organic. Rats follow within days, not weeks, especially anywhere food waste sits exposed long enough to attract them. Apartment buildings become the worst-hit environments instantly, because dozens of households were depending on one small shared space to disappear their combined output every single day, and that tiny space cannot absorb a week's worth of neglect, let alone two. Stairwells that once smelled faintly of nothing in particular now carry a smell residents start avoiding taking longer routes to skip the ground floor. Human behavior starts shaping the outcome as much as the waste itself does. Some people begin burning trash in backyard barrels, filling narrow residential streets with acrid smoke that lingers over rooftops for hours. Others start dumping bags in empty lots, alleys, or the wooded edges of town, wherever enforcement seems weakest or nobody is watching closely. One household making that choice barely registers on a citywide scale. Millions of households making the same choice independently, without ever coordinating with one another, turns entire neighborhoods into informal, unregulated landfills within a matter of days, and once one corner of a block starts collecting trash, more of it tends to follow, the same way one piece of litter invites another until the whole corner looks abandoned. Public health departments are usually the first institutions to sound a genuine alarm, and for reasons grounded in history rather than speculation. Waste draws rodents. Rodents carry disease. Standing organic material breeds bacteria fast, especially during warmer months. Hospitals in the most densely packed neighborhoods start seeing an uptick in gastrointestinal illness and skin infections well before anyone in an official capacity is willing to call it an outbreak out loud. Modern sanitation historically extended average human life expectancy more than any single medical breakthrough that came after it. More than antibiotics, more than most vaccines, according to public health historians. Take it away, temporarily, and the consequences do not creep in slowly. They show up fast, and they do not show up evenly across a population. That unevenness is the part most people underestimate the most. A household with money can pay a private hauler, drive waste to a distant facility themselves, or change habits to generate less of it in the first place. A family packed into a small apartment in a dense lower-income neighborhood does not have any of those options realistically available to them. The exact same nationwide crisis, experienced from two different addresses a few miles apart, becomes two unrecognizable lived experiences, one an inconvenience worth complaining about at dinner, the other a genuine daily hazard for anyone with young children or a compromised immune system. By the end of the second week, cities begin declaring formal emergencies specifically around waste management, which sounds comedic until you are the one living inside it. Empty parking structures, unused stadium lots, and fallow industrial land get hastily converted into temporary dumping zones, lined well enough, in theory, to keep the worst contaminants out of local groundwater supplies. In some regions, military logistics units, normally reserved for hurricane and flood response, get deployed for the sole purpose of moving trash. Which is a strange sentence to write, but an accurate one. And it tells you something about how quickly an unglamorous system can become a genuine matter of national attention once it stops. Stop for a second and think about your street specifically. Which house, which building, which corner would become the worst of it first? Every neighborhood already has an answer to that question, if nobody has ever said it out loud. And that instinct, oddly enough, is usually right. Recycling collapses faster than general waste collection does, since sorting facilities depend on constant emptying to keep functioning at all. Years of careful household habits, rinsing containers, separating plastics from paper, sorting glass by color, all of it becomes meaningless overnight. Material that was meant to become something new becomes more waste, sitting in the same overwhelmed system as everything else around it, and the environmental progress of an entire generation reverses within a single month, unnoticed by everyone busy dealing with more immediate problems. Landfills, oddly enough, do not run out of physical space right away. In most regions, there is still plenty of room to bury material safely for months, sometimes years. The actual bottleneck is the same one that shows up in every version of a collapse like this one: the trucks, the routes, the drivers, the schedules that used to connect a full bin to an empty landfill somewhere out of sight. Space was never the constraint. Movement always was, and always will be. And that is the part nobody appreciates until it stops happening entirely. Within a month, informal markets start filling the vacuum, the same way they always do during a shortage of anything valuable. Private operators with their trucks charge whatever price the panic will support. Neighbors pool money together to rent equipment for a single weekend run to the nearest working facility. Scrap metal collectors, already a quiet presence in most cities, expand dramatically, since valuable material sitting out in the open suddenly becomes far easier to access than it used to be under normal circumstances, and what used to be a marginal trade becomes, briefly, a genuinely profitable one. drawing new people into a line of work they never considered before. Some communities genuinely surprise themselves during this stretch of time. People compost aggressively, not necessarily out of environmental conviction, but out of plain, immediate necessity. Neighbors who never exchanged more than a passing nod start organizing shared trips to whatever disposal site still has some remaining capacity. Businesses cut back packaging to shrink their footprint of waste generation. From a distance, all of this looks a little like environmental progress. Up close, it is survival wearing the costume of a lifestyle choice, and the two can look identical from far enough away, which is why it is easy to mistake one for the other in hindsight. But informal effort has hard limits that no amount of goodwill can erase. A group of neighbors with one, borrowed truck, can manage a few dozen household bags. They cannot manage medical waste, construction debris, or industrial byproduct, all of which require specialized handling that ordinary people are neither equipped nor legally permitted to provide safely. Hospitals face a uniquely dangerous version of this entire crisis, generating hazardous waste continuously with nowhere safe to send it, inside the buildings meant to protect people from precisely that kind of exposure in the first place. Factories producing chemical byproducts face a quieter but equally serious version of the same problem. Since improperly stored industrial waste does not smell bad, it can contaminate soil and water for years after the fact, long after the original crisis is a distant memory for everyone else. Several months in, governments start rebuilding. And rebuilding rarely means restoring the old system as it was before. Sensor-equipped bins that signal when they are full start appearing in pilot programs across major cities. Smaller, decentralized processing sites closer to individual neighborhoods get proposed instead of one massive central landfill hours away by truck. Some of this technology existed before any of this ever happened. It never had the political urgency behind it to get properly funded and implemented at scale, because nobody wants to spend money fixing a system that, on the surface, was already working fine, until the day it visibly was not. There are a few genuine long-term benefits buried inside all this wreckage, worth naming honestly rather than dismissing entirely. Households forced to think carefully about what they throw away rarely go back to wasting the same amount once the crisis finally ends. Composting habits built out of fear sometimes outlast the fear itself by years afterward. Cities occasionally finally fund the redundant, resilient systems that sanitation departments have requested and been denied for decades, because nobody wanted to pay for backup capacity. Nobody expected to need until, suddenly, everyone did, all at once, with no warning at all. Still, nobody standing in a street full of smoke, flies, and overflowing bags would call any single week of this genuine progress. Few utility failures move this fast, or feel this personal this quickly, because unlike a power outage somewhere in the distance, or a delayed shipment you barely notice, this one arrives directly at your front door and refuses to leave on its own. Sitting there, growing, until someone finally does something about it, and in the meantime, you are the one who has to live beside it. Your bin is still sitting at the curb right now, where you left it this morning. Tomorrow it will still be there, and the waste inside has not changed one single bit. What disappeared was not the trash itself, and it was never about the trash at all. It was the quiet, unglamorous labor that used to make it someone else's problem before you ever had to think about it twice in your entire life. Garbage collection was never about trucks driving slowly down a street early in the morning. It was the line, redrawn every single day without anyone ever noticing it happen, between the life you live and everything that life leaves behind.